All right. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Anime Village podcast. Today we are bringing you something very special. We're going to start a new series of the podcast. So we're going to have two episodes coming out a week of our podcast, and we're going to be doing a series focused on storytelling and how storytelling is being told. And Brian's going to give you a bunch of insights about writing and strategy and techniques and character development. So I'm really excited about this part of the podcast because I think this is going to give us a real good deep dive of Adamanto, as well as your side of your strategy, how you do all your writing, Brian, and everything, and how you coming up with the product for Adamanto and Undead Reckoning and everything that you've been working on. So I'm very excited to get this new series of our podcast doing.
Me too.
Yeah, it's awesome. So today we're going to start with reps, how it is revolutionizing storytelling. So this is reps has been a big part of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, revolutionizing. That's how we like to table it for sure.
Yeah.
We think very highly of it. Although it's just new, so it's just gaining some traction now. And what reps really is, I mean, it was kind of we happened upon the acronym by accident, and what rep stands for is read, engage, play, and stream. And really, what it is, it's kind of like it wears multiple hats. Where at one point it's a brand building exercise, and then on the other side it's a story, world building, and product launch sequence, which will make sense as we get deeper into what it is. But really, it kind of came to the fore when we started thinking about Gary, my partner, and I, co-founder of Anime Village, when we started thinking about, okay, well, we've got all these products, we've got manga, we're introducing metaverse, and then within the metaverse you have avatars, and then you have P2E aspects of it, and then you have an RPG that we're developing, and then further down the road, we want to develop limited anime series based on the characters and the stories that we're doing. So while we have all these disparate products and services, what they all hold in common is they're based on the stories and the characters that we're creating at that R stage, which is the reps,
Yeah.
right? Or sorry, the read stage from reps. And that comes in the form of manga. So the first leg of that is Adamanto, as you can see by Jeff's background over there. And that's our action or shonen title. And we dropped the first chapter a couple of months ago, so we're very happy with that. And we're hard at work with the first 3 volumes, which is going to be 264 pages in total, which is cool. I'm actually just banging out the final chapter, which is chapter 12.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's really, really cool. I introduced one of my favorite genres, which is mecha. So you'll see. I'll share the script with you. It's a lot of fun. Shinichi takes his badassery to a next level. But anyway, so that is reps. Read, engage, play, stream, and that is the chronology of how we're releasing these products. But again, the stories, the characters that we introduce at the R stage is being woven into the E, the engage, which is our metaverse, then the P, which is play, which is our RPG, and then finally stream, which again is further down the road. But that's the uniqueness of the reps process, and it's unique because typically what you'll have is you have an IP, let's say, that is, I'll use Marvel as an example because I go way back when, from being a Marvel geek to when I was like 6 years old. So you'd have all these characters like Spider-Man and Captain America and Thor, and they were introduced in comic books. So when those characters became more popular and their readerships grew, obviously Marvel was looking for other channels to broadcast these characters in. So the first channel that was animated, right? So we
Yeah.
had, remember those really cruddy 60s Marvel cartoons
Yes, I
that they
do.
had
Yep.
back in the day?
Yeah.
Essentially, they took the artwork from the comics and then they kind of, I guess you can call them animated because they were kind of like choppy and going all over the place. But I mean, when I was watching them as a kid, they were just cool as all hell. So I couldn't complain too much. And then from there, as the characters got more popular and then technology started, coming out with all of these different channels, they permeated into video games, and then of course the MCU. And now they're kind of going into all different aspects with merchandising and all these different products. But that was kind of like it wasn't a strategy because it was, here we have the comic books. Okay, now we're popular enough people know about it. Now we're going to create these animated TV shows for them, and then video games and so on and so forth. Or you have other properties, let's say like Assassin's Creed, right?
Right.
Where it started off as a video game,
Yeah.
which became quite popular, and then it kind of went into comic books, and then it went into film and other broadcast channels like that. What we're doing is we're introducing an established strategy that goes from point A to point D in this case, because we have four of them,
Yeah.
and then it's going to follow that line for all of our products. So we're starting with Action Shonen, which is Adamanto. And then it's going to move on to the engage stage, which is the metaverse. The action or shonen village is called Fury Falls. We're currently mapping out the RPG, which is called Adamanto Bodo. And then finally, we would have an anime series based on that character. And we're just going to repeat that process throughout the four key genres that we've established, which is action, adventure, supernatural, and slice of life.
Yeah, it's super exciting time to be like, what you guys are doing with reps, and it's really cool that Adamanto is really getting rolled out and becoming an RPG, and the game, all the gaming parts of Adamanto is coming out. I'm really excited to hear about see all the first 3 volumes of Adamanto. I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week of what's going on with Adamanto, and I'm super excited to see more of what's going on. But for reps, why is it such a different from other brand and product launch strategies? Like, what makes it so different from others?
I think it's what I kind of hinted to before, where it's an established strategy of rolling out these different products in that specific order, as opposed to other franchises, other IP, that they build an audience, they build a fan base, and then they move on to these other channels, right? So whether it's a video game first and then it moves into a comic book, then it moves into a movie, or it's a movie, then it goes into a comic book, then it goes into a video game, so on and so forth. It's really just kind of, they've built the audience through that one medium, and then they start permeating into these other ones where it's like, okay, we have the fan base now, which will support the video game, which will support the comic book or the manga, and so on and so forth. What we're doing is we're building an audience from the manga stage, the comic book stage,
Yeah.
where we're getting people familiar with the characters, with the lore, with the story. And then from there, we're building it into those other products. And that's an established process, as opposed to coming out with the Bodo Adamanto RPG. And then, okay, it catches on. That's great. Now we're going to release a manga that's based on it, or an anime series that's based on it, or
Yeah.
we're going to create avatars and NFTs that are based on it, right?
Yeah.
The idea of brand building, I mean, my background, as you know, is in advertising and marketing, and I've always been a big fan of integrated programs. So integrated programs are essentially just something that utilize a bunch of different channels. Like, you're on the radio, you have TV commercials, you have online ads, and so on and so forth, to deliver a consistent message across all those channels. We're really doing the same thing, but we're doing it in a bit of a different way, because it's based on the stories, and then again, the products that we're releasing in succession based on these stories, and building the audience as we go. So the manga, first step, we're building that audience. So now, we're available on VoiceMe, we're available on Global Comics. You can download it on the site. So we're getting, we don't have millions. We're not a household name by any stretch of the imagination, but we've got thousands of eyeballs on Adamanto. So it's, when you start talking about it, people, oh yeah, I read that, or I checked it out on VoiceMe. I'm getting, that kind of feedback now, which is amazing, very appreciative of that. And people are really digging the title. And, so you can see how we're at that first level of the reps. Next, when we get to the engage level, we're going to have that built-in fan base that is going to recognize these characters, right? So they're going to want their Shinichi Tanzo avatar, or their Lord Kami avatar, and they'll see the NPC characters that are like Hina and Hanada, the Ninja Twins,
Yeah.
or Oda Nobunaga, all those guys. It's not gonna be something that's brand new, right? It's almost
Right.
like what Disney is trying to do with its characters, where it's like everybody's familiar with it. Now we're just going to do a retread of it. Well, no, we're getting people familiar at the manga level, and then we're building upon that.
That's awesome, and that's great news to hear that people have been checking it out and starting to get eyes on Adamanto, which is super exciting news to hear about that as well too.
Yeah, we're very happy with that. So again, we're making baby steps, but
Yeah,
when people think about the most popular franchises out there, whether it's in the anime, manga, comic book, or MCU, DCUs of the world, right? Superman, Batman, even Naruto, didn't catch fire right away.
right,
Even Demon Slayer, or if you're thinking about what are some Chainsaw Man or some of these others, right? They started off using Chainsaw Man as an example. It was a manga for years, right? And then all of a sudden it gained popularity, and then they announced that they're creating an anime out of it, and then it started really kind of mushrooming, and other people who had never heard of this crazy title started getting into it, right? They started pouring through the back issues of the manga, and then they started watching the anime. That's how it works, right? We're
yeah,
doing the same thing, but we're establishing a precedent, right? We're establishing a set series of steps where people can follow through. And it's also cool from an engagement level, because maybe you're into manga but you're not into the metaverse, right? Or maybe you're a player first and you don't really you're not really into manga, but maybe you'll be more into the P2E aspect of the metaverse. That's great. You can create your own experience this way and enjoy the characters and the stories the way you see fit.
right. And I think that answers my next question about what does it mean for like the fans, like the experience rep, but also has it changed their experience? Because I think you just hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and we created it because we're fans too, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
a huge manga, anime, comic book guy, have been since I can ever remember. And really it's like I always gravitated towards some things more than others. So I was always reading more than I was playing. I got more into the gaming when I maybe was into my early late teens, and then mid 20s, and then I kind of fell off again, but I was always into the reading part of it, right? And I always loved watching shows. Especially, I think I've mentioned this to you before. Ninja Scrolls, one of my favorites. I
yeah,
hadn't seen it
that's
in years. I watched it again a couple of months ago, and it just brought a smile to my face. So, if I'm on the outside looking in of Anime Village and I say, yeah, I'm not really into gaming, I'm just more into the reading and the watching, we've got you covered there. If you're a gamer and you're more into the RPGs and the P2E, we've got you covered. And with our hybrid model, which doesn't necessarily just cover blockchain, if you're not, we know that there's a lot of mistrust when it comes to the blockchain and metaverse, and there's also a lot of misinformation, and people just might not be familiar with it. So
yeah,
you're just more into traditional gaming, we got you covered as well. So yeah, it's hard to find that balance between being everything to everyone and not diluting things and not becoming just kind of generic. But I think we've done a really good job in that respect, because it's not the product that we're watering down, it's the way people consume it that
right.
we're offering all of these different choices.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it to you before on another podcast, but I think it's a really cool aspect of reps in the sense of like, hey, I'm not, and then you might have mentioned it too, but like I'm a gamer, but I'm really not into manga, but I like the RPG. But it could also open up someone's eyes to mangas, like it could change like someone to like, oh, let me check out the manga because the game's really cool. Shinichi is a really cool badass. Now let me go check him out in Adamanto in the manga and see what what he does in the manga and like follow his story too in there.
Yeah, and that's really our plans with the metaverse as well, and the blockchain, where we want to open people's eyes to it, right?
Yeah,
So like I said before, there's a lot of misinformation there, and there's a lot of mistrust, and rightfully so, because you have a lot of companies out there that are looking to cash in quick
yeah,
and deliver products that delivered zero value,
right.
or entertainment, right? But people just glommed onto it because it was the thing to do, right? Where you
Yeah,
had people paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for cartoons, and that was it, right? So I know, I can't prove it now because it hasn't happened yet, but I know for a fact that when there's someone that's with a gaming background and then they check out a P2E environment, they're going to be right into it because we're interconnecting the two. So, for instance, when we release Adamanto Bodo, the RPG, you're going to be able to earn upgrades, artifacts, different things in the metaverse and apply it to that game,
wow.
right? which is really cool.
That's
So
awesome.
you can see, and that's your choice, right? You can do it, or you can just stick to the RPG, or you can just stick to the blockchain version of it in the metaverse, which is being driven by the stories introduced in Adamanto. It's really up to you. So again, it's like consumer empowerment, and that's really what Web3 is all about, right? It's like giving the power back to the people as
Yeah.
opposed to being inundated with messages that you don't want, and all these big companies just sucking your data and information and then using it to, churn back content to you that they want to sell you stuff.
Right, right. Exactly. So it's really cool what you guys have. And I think that's another cool aspect is how it all interlocks together, whether it's just, with the RPG interacting in the metaverse, you can collect artifacts and bring it into the RPG, which is fantastic, which I don't think I've really ever heard of before too as well. So it's all amazing stuff. I mean, when you guys rolled out reps, what has been the reaction thus far to like how's people been reacting to it? I see you post on LinkedIn and we've been posting on Instagram and social media. What's everyone's been reaction to reps?
Yeah, well, like I said, we reps was always there. We just didn't give it a name,
Yeah,
which was
right.
kind of crazy when you think about it. And even the acronym, because when we were discussing updating the content on myanimeVillage.com, and the one thing we've wrestled with is really articulating well what the Anime Village product offering is, what is the point of differentiation, what is the USP, unique selling proposition, all that wonderful stuff. So then Gary and I just started, brainstorming some ideas, and then it came to me where it's like, okay, we've got these different products that were all tying into the stories. So then I just, put my head down. I was behind my MacBook Air, and then it was like, okay, read manga, engage with the metaverse, play RPG, stream original anime series. And then I presented it to him, and it was like, oh, that spells reps. And I didn't even know. It was like, oh
Yeah.
shit, you're right.
Yeah.
That spells reps. That
Yeah.
works because, from the acronym and from what reps are, you're doing repetitions, and we're repeating this process not only through the different genres, but also through the different mediums that we're broadcasting these genres in.
Yeah, yeah, and it's cool that with all the mediums and everything that you guys are broadcasting in, and reps is really going to be something really cool. Do you see other companies trying to follow this model that you guys have, like, you guys have rolled out?
I hope so. And you can really just retrofit it to whatever your primary product is. So, for instance, if you're a video game developer, right, you can set that process as here comes the video game, and whether it's console, whether it's online, whether it's mobile, whatever the case may be. And then you plan out the other stages of what the other channels you want to present that IP in, right? You can,
Yeah.
it's quite flexible. But I think really the most important aspect of it is how it builds the IP, how it builds awareness for that brand, and then how it leads audiences, players, readers through the landscape, but in a way that is best for them, that is most comfortable for them.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see if others do follow. And I mean, has anyone, I mean, with everything that you have going on, has anyone ever like reached out to you or Gary for some guidance on like trying interested in doing like the same thing at Anime Village or or even writing mangas? Has anyone reached out to you guys about like your background or help with anything?
Yeah, so I had another gentleman via LinkedIn reach out to me. It was actually based on a conversation I had with a colleague of his a couple of weeks ago, and he's another creator. And he's interested in getting into the Web3 space with some of his characters and designs. So there might be some teaming up as well. But what really kind of triggered that conversation was the reps process, right? He went to the website, he was reading through it, and says, wow, that's pretty cool. I've never heard of something like that before, at least not something that's been done that way before. So with marketing people, it is resonating, but like I
Yeah.
said, we just kind of started shouting out the reps acronym from the top of the hills. So yeah, we'll start gaining traction for sure.
That's awesome. That's great. It's really cool. And then finally, reps. How does it connect all our universe? I think we might have touched upon it a little bit, but like, how does it connect everything that we have going on in our universe? I mean, our storytelling is just not linear. I think I mentioned that a bunch of times. It's literally a world. It's a universe. We have a ton going on, which is super exciting because it's just not a straight line. We know there's going to be more to our characters than just on the mangas.
Yeah, like I said, it's the reps process is going to be replicated throughout the four key genres that we've established. So, like I said, we're starting with shonen or action. We have manga Adamanto, we have Metaverse Fury Falls, we have Bodo RPG, and then the series based on Adamanto, which again is further down the line. Then we rinse and repeat with the next genre that we're introducing, which is supernatural. So we have our manga, which is called Undead Reckoning, which we're currently fleshing out the scripts for. And then the metaverse presence is called Mystic Valley. The RPG we haven't even started thinking about on that end. And
Yeah.
then obviously the anime we haven't as well. And then the two other genres, or the main genres that we're focusing on, are going to be slice of life, the manga being Tunin Kigo, the metaverse being Harmony Hills, game stream, and then finally we have adventure, which is a fantasy title really, which is called Crow Magnum. That's the manga. The metaverse island is called, I should remember this, Legends Gate. And
Yeah.
then we have the game, and then we have streaming.
Wow. Wow. So it's a bunch. Reps plays into everything.
It is a bunch, and it seems overwhelming, and it can at times, but I think we've done a pretty good job of compartmentalizing how we're building, how we're developing and releasing products. So we're really focused now on Adamanto and the action component of the world, along with Village 555. So imagine Village 555 is the hub of our metaverse, and that's where you go, and then you shoot off to the different genre villages that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So really what we're building now is Village 555, which we have a downloadable demo at myanimeVillage.com that you can check out. We always like to say we're dropping you into a living, breathing anime, which I think we've done, the development team did a fantastic job of. And from there, it's Fury Falls, which is the shonen village for the metaverse.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Village 555 is really cool. I saw on our Discord that we had a live stream of that go on a couple months ago, and that was really cool to watch that and be a part of that. All the reps and the revolution, how it is revolutionizing storytelling is really, really cool. And what we're doing here at Anime Village, I think we're just building something huge and massive, and I think keeping our fans engaged. I don't think they'll ever get tired of what we have here.
No, and that's another cool thing about how we're doing it. So, like I mentioned with Adamanto, the first three volumes, or really volume one that we're comprising into one, is 264 pages of manga.
Wow.
So we have 264 pages of content to shift over and populate into the RPG. And we're like I said, we're mapping it out, planning it out, and we just looked at chapters 1 and 2, and that's already, I think that was 8 levels of gameplay.
Wow.
So you can see how far it's going to go. And the plan for the Bodo Adamanto, the RPG, is to have the launch of the game. And then every month, we're going to introduce a new level or a new series that is based on the lore introduced from the manga.
That's awesome.
And it's not going to be hard to do because we already have the guts of the game developed, and then we just populate it with the new stories and new characters that appear in that, right? We already have the content. It's not like game developers spend years working on the storylines, the characters, how it all works into it. Well, we've already developed those stories, right? We've taken those years already to develop the narrative, to develop the characters, all of that. So when it comes time to actually release the RPG, we can hit the ground running, right?
Gotcha.
It's not going to be, we don't have to think about anything. It just literally writes itself.
That's awesome. I want to ask for you too, Bryan, because you have a hand in, you're writing the mangas, you were help developing the RPG and the story with that as well too. I mean, what's been that experience like for yourself too, just, to have a hand in REPS and almost in every part of it, just about and the reps aspect of it.
It's really cool. I mean, like I said, I started off my career, I don't want to say how many years ago, but quite a few years ago as a copywriter. And I've always been a fan of different writing forms, except for poetry. Poetry was never my thing, never got into it. Don't know why. It's actually one of the most difficult forms of writing. Maybe that's why I stayed away from it. But there's really something cool about, at one day you're writing scripts for a manga, and then you're writing scripts for an RPG, and then you're writing longer form content for descriptions of the characters that are featured on the site. And then when it comes to the scripting of the video game, that's going to be a different experience. So it's really taking the same thing and adapting it to how it's being broadcast to whoever's playing, to whoever's reading, to whoever's watching, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, I have a lot of experience with writing manga scripts, obviously, and then also television or film scripts. It's quite different. So, if we have a 22-page manga and you want to create a half-hour anime out of it, you
Yeah.
can see how, well, what do you do? Okay, well, out of a 22-page manga, I'll probably only get about between 15 and 20 minutes
Right.
of actual footage. So you have to add stuff, or, for instance, when we have in chapter 1 in Adamanto, we have Shinichi and Fuma Kataro, his right-hand man. They travel to Sistine, Greece, to steal Harpe from the Dryads of the
Right.
Dadia forest. That, for them traveling there, that's not in the manga, right? It's kind of like Lord Kami says, send them there, and then all of a sudden they're there. So
Yeah.
if you're transposing that into an anime script, you probably would add a scene where how they got there,
Like,
right?
yeah.
To eat up
Right.
a couple of more minutes and to flesh things out. So there are like little pockets of what I've always done is when I create a manga script or a comic book script, there are always those things that are inferred or implied. And then when you create a TV or a film script out of it, those things that are implied get fleshed out more and
Yeah.
built into it. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
again accommodate for that runtime.
That's really cool, and that's a great aspect too of I think of what's this series is all going to be about too, of how with writing and strategy and getting pen to paper and character to paper and making it all work out. I'm really excited to hear about the insights of yourself, but also to hear more about what we have with Adamanto and how all the writing is going with that and the technique of how you came up with the characters and everything.
Yeah, the creation of Adamanto's a story unto itself, I think, and just really, I want to take the opportunity in the later podcasts to really talk about the depths of research and the lore that's built into it and the level of I've it's kind of weird, even though it's a fantasy title, right? I always said it has to be believable, and that doesn't make any sense when you first hear about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's when you introduce a fantasy world, it abides by its own rules and regulations and laws,
yeah,
right? So once you introduce those laws and regulations, you got to abide by them. You got to make sure not to step outside of those boundaries. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense,
right,
right?
right,
You got to make sure. So, for instance, in Adamanto, when it comes to weapons and all these things, we're in 12th century Japan. So they don't have, AK-47s. They don't have grenade launchers or bazookas or anti-aircraft weaponry. So had to go back and research, okay, well, when was gunpowder invented? And did they have any kind of like weapons that use gunpowder? And what kind of metals were used? And how did they smelt it? And how did they this? And all of these other wonderful things. But I tend to ramble when I get onto that. We'll cover those details in another podcast.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's really cool. You gave me some insight about that, and I think that's really fantastic. But I'm excited to get this series going, and I know this is a good first episode of our series, and more to come for sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian, for your time today.
It's been great. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, same here.